Greetings. Oh my goodness. YouTube is letting me live stream again. I'm so excited to be here and share with you a new relationship paradigm that is incoming. So before we get into what is this new relationship paradigm, first I want to talk a little bit about, and I encourage you, if you're jumping on here now, or if you are joining later on the recording, to get a piece of paper and to do some of this work with me live. Okay. So, a new relationship paradigm, the old relationship paradigm, what did that look like? What are we coming from? That's the first part of this. And where is this going to go? So, first of all, I like to imagine I'm drawing a line down the center of the page, and the first part of this talk is going to be about the old relationship paradigm, what its downfalls, pitfalls have been, where it's taken us, how to honor that and release that so that we can open up to a new relationship paradigm. And if you are on here and you want to say hello, I would love to say hi to you. Joining you from my bed. Today it's snowing here where I'm at, and I'm personally stepping into a new relationship paradigm in such a big way that sometimes when we make a big shift, it kind of like takes our body a minute to integrate that. And we'll talk about that as we move through the center. But that's my excuse for being in bed. Also, just everything's done this way today, right? A lot of online stuff, which is helpful because we could all transform from the comfort of our own homes. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen, I want you to start by listing out with me what is the old relationship paradigm? What is the relationship paradigm we have been living in? What does it entail? What does it look like? And maybe you don't even agree with it, but you can identify it. Okay. So maybe just take a moment, write a few things if you want to make a comment about what you think they are. But I want to start by bringing up the idea that we have been given this paradigm through several avenues. One has been the movies and TV, right? And what does that look like? We've got like the happy ever after paradigm, which, by the way, is not at all an impossible paradigm. It's just the way it's been presented and the way it has been shown that once you reach that point, that's the end point. And there's nothing after that. Okay. And then, of course, we have the basic idea of a man and woman. Now, not to count anyone else with any other preferences out, but if we boil it down to the core principle of masculine and feminine, okay, we have basic archetypes for what each one is supposed to be. And a lot of them are carried over from old time periods, like the man goes to work and the woman stays home with the child. And of course, these have evolved through the feminist movement and, equal rights and so forth, where in a way, there have been a little bit of equaling out, but in another way, we've kind of gone in the other direction where in many cases, the man has been devalued, the woman has been empowered, but there has been like a break in that basic structure of masculine feminine. I'm sure that we can all agree. We can see this across the world, and we're probably at the height of relationship breakdown across the board. But to me, this also means that we are ending an old paradigm, and the breakdown is what happens before we enter a new paradigm. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, does anybody have anything that I'm just going to sit up a little bit here? I feel like I'm just a puddle in bed. And I encourage you to make yourself comfortable, but also to really sit with these ideas with me. And hopefully we can, maybe you've got your partner with you, or maybe you want to bring them in if you've got one, to move through some of these issues of old relationship and actually go through a closure today. this was all meant to be a weekend workshop, but I've decided to do a simplified live today and just get started. I now that I'm seeing that YouTube will let me do lives again, which they weren't letting me do, maybe it's because I wasn't being as active anymore. But now that I see that I can do it, I feel like this will happen more often. So let's look at the idea that there are certain things that have been okay and not okay in the old relationship paradigm, okay? And that's how I'm going to talk about it. So in the old relationship paradigm, let's say, what is something that has been not okay? You guys might write these things down yourself. And I'm just going to write a few, maybe you will, and then we're going to go through some of them. So, and again, we're talking about a masculine feminine dynamic. Now, that could show up in two women just as easily as in a man and a woman. It's also the dynamic that is going on inside of us, right? We have both masculine, feminine dynamics. So, in a way, the old paradigm is not really taking into account the inner union, the inner relationship. It's more like just what society has said is okay in the external relationship. So one of them is, okay, society says it's not okay, and therefore we've all collectively agreed that if someone is not pulling their weight in the relationship, someone's doing more than the other one, someone's doing all, whether it's paying all the bills or, you know, doing all of the work and someone else is just putzing around, that's not okay. Okay, another thing in a old relationship paradigm, cheating, infidelity, okay? Or any other terminology you want to use. You could say if that person is being abusive, if that person is gaslighting you, being a narcissist, if they're have an addiction problem, if they are not, honoring you, all of these things can be part of the old paradigm. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and turn around and say those are all part of the new paradigm. That's not how this translates, but let's just look at it from the way that we know it. Okay, so old paradigm, we've got some kind of a commitment that happens and then roles that are needing to be filled. Okay, so you enter a relationship, there's already a predetermined, and this is going back, before us, before our parents' generation even. And if we really, really look at marriage contracts way back when, they actually were over land ownership or over property. So they have evolved somewhat to bring us to date to where now we look at TV shows and we look at movies and we're like, okay, you get married and there's a certain obligation, like you're with that person and they should act this way. They should be responsible. They should take care of their part. They should, not go with somebody else or whatever. These are all like general, they should help with the bills, or there should be an agreement in the family that one person's doing that and the other one's helping out with the kids. Okay, so there's certain prescribed roles that when those roles aren't fulfilled to the liking of the partner, then there's some kind of a conflict, right? And that conflict, if it's bad enough, like if there's an infidelity, it could lead to a dissolution of the relationship, right? So this is in the old relationship paradigm because we have certain expectations of relationship. Why? Well, what do normally we think a relationship is there for? Anyone have a comment? I mean, I think most people are looking for happiness and fulfillment and partnership, just someone to live life with. However, that is in the new relationship paradigm not the purpose, I just want to say, of relationship. That is not the purpose of relationship in the new relationship paradigm, is just to be happy and like have someone there to fulfill your wishes and make dinner for you. So if that's part of the old relationship paradigm, that's fine as long as we recognize that's how it's been working. though as dysfunctional as it has been, right? So each one of us could, if we're in a relationship right now, write a list of everything that we don't like about our current relationship and how it's going. So you might say, they get angry a lot, like spend too much money, drink too much alcohol, they don't spend time with the kids, they don't listen to me when I'm trying to talk, they don't put the toilet seat down, whatever your thing is. Every single person in a relationship right now, I can guarantee almost all of you could write a list of what you don't like in the relationship currently. And I actually suggest that you do that. So I'm giving you a moment, if you don't have a piece of paper already, to get one and write your list. Write your list of things you wish were better in your relationship. Because this is good. This is helpful in understanding and moving into the new relationship paradigm, which we are going to do. And remember, this is a very brief synopsis of a much longer workshop and retreat and online course that's coming together. If you are interested in doing more of this work to come, I feel like this is the work of the new world that we all must do if we are to shift things in the world. I'm giving you guys a moment to do that. So if you're just popping on, piece of paper, write down all the things you don't like. And if you're not in a relationship, then just write the things that bug you about why you're not in a relationship. Like what happened with the last person? What were the pitfalls? What happened? What went wrong? And a lot of the information I'm sharing with you today, I learned from one of my mentors, Lisa Kay of Integrated Consciousness. And both she and I are putting our work together into a relationship program. Some of the most transformational relationship work I have ever done. So I've been working with the I Ching lately before we get into our lists. If you don't know the I Ching, one of the most ancient divination tools, I was pulling about relationships the other day and reading how how partnership is the core element of all of society. And this is actually the thing that I feel is true and why it's one of the most important things to focus on right now in the world. Because if we look at society and we see society's broken and it needs healing, but our intimate relationships aren't working, the best thing we can do is heal our intimate relationship. And first it is in here, and then it is with our person. And when we do that, I do believe we will change the world. We will heal the world. We are the world. We are the children. But really, seriously, we are the world. So we are the microcosm of this bigger picture. And if we still have dysfunctional relationships, that is the outpicturing we're seeing in the world. So this is so important. So you've written down all of your grievances about your relationships, okay? And all of those things, I want you to, with me, imagine, and maybe you even have a space in front of you. Maybe you can find like a little tapestry or silk or some blanket or pillow, and you're just going to lay that down in front of yourself, okay? And I want you to lay down this list that you've just written about your grievances of relationships, and I want you to place them on this altar in front of you. And recognize that all of these things are holy, that they have actually brought you to this moment. And when we lay them on the altar, we kind of are zeroing them out and recognizing we couldn't even be here in this place where we would even watch this video if we couldn't be aware of ourselves enough to come to this place and to write these things down. because the new relationship paradigm that I'm alluding to is one where we know our relationships are the world. We know our relationships are the foundation of society, and we know that the only purpose of relationship is to self-actualize. The only purpose of relationships is to self-actualize, not to make you happy, not to make you dinner, not to be your comrade, not to, spend time with you, even though those are all great. Those are awesome extra little perks, but relationships are alchemical in nature. So their purpose is to help you self-realize, and we draw relationships to us for the very purpose of self-realization. So before we can get into that kind of a mindset, though, first we have to lay on the altar, right, of our now moment, because this is the only moment. So everything that's led up to here is data, right, that goes on the altar. We're like, okay, this is how I've been functioning. I've been functioning looking at my relationship like this. So I'm going to lay it all on the altar, and I'm going to take a moment to honor it as holy. The anger, the not being able to communicate, the stuff I don't like, all of these, because I'm starting to recognize as I lay these down, there's nothing that I can see in the other that is not also in me somewhere. So the first act is to honor the previous grievances, right? Honor the previous misalignments and difficulties and troubles, because those are the fire, if you will, in the alchemical container of the union. But since we weren't taught that that's what relationships were about, they just look like red flags or negativities or things that we need to heal or go to therapy for, or stuff we got to heal, or questions if we're going to leave this person over or whatever. So that's why I recommend we lay them all on the altar and we come into a place of honoring of them, because no one's perfect. No relationship is perfect. No relationship has nothing wrong with it. So to lay them all out on the altar, and we can do this with our own stuff too, like the things that we don't like about ourselves, write them down, lay them on the altar, light a candle, place a crystal there, maybe light some incense, do the whole deal. There's something about symbolically representing these things that helps us to go to the next place. Otherwise, we just keep repeating, right? So we've got to do something tangible, physical, symbolic that speaks to our subconscious mind. So the elemental representation speaks to the elements that we're made of, okay? So we lay these on the altar, we honor them, we light a candle, light incense, and we thank them for showing us what we have thought of about relationship in the past, and the really little mentoring and teaching that we've received in society up to this point. And then so this is what we had to work with, right? So we honor that. And then before we can go into a new paradigm, we must have a death process, an initiatory process that ends the old and begins the new. That is a destructive element, okay? And for some people, that is an actual divorce or separation or a breakup or something like that. But it doesn't have to be that, because usually if we go through that, then we will just find someone else and we'll just pick up where we left off and we'll just find the same issues that we're working with, okay? So I recommend that we actually go through a death process. Eyeglasses? I don't really know, but I'm doing a live video, so I'm not really sure. Um, it's funny he says black glasses. Will you close that door, sweetie? So a death process, if you've never read Women Who Run with the Wolves, highly recommend it to every person, whether single or in a couple. Really, really important, especially the story of Skeleton Woman. And I'm going to summarize the story here because it's important. And that is that, first of all, the understanding of the life, death, life, nature in not only reality, but in relationships. That it used to be traditionally that Lady Death, La Loba, she of the transition, known by many names in many cultures, um, would be invited to a wedding with a place there for her because it would be understood that relationships all have the life, death, life, nature, that in order for them to deepen in their love and transform and up level and initiate, they have to understand that death processes are part of that. And I'm not talking about physical death, usually not physical death, but as some kind of a transformation, a death process of the old to be reborn again. And these are the difficult passages in relationship that most people will run away from when they're confronted with, thinking there's a loss of love, thinking there's a betrayal, thinking there could actually be a physical infidelity or betrayal or a breakup or harsh words or angry or abuse. But all of these things are an attempt to, okay, and I'll go into that a little bit more as we get into the new paradigm. So to honor the death process, right now we could just put on some kind of a black veil. I didn't really come prepared. I do have a black veil I sometimes use for this example, but to put something on and even write like a eulogy type of a thing to your previous relationship self or to your previous relationship, even if you're still in the relationship, even if it's not over, especially if it's not, if you're just like having a difficult time where you're wanting to move into a new paradigm, you treat it like an honoring ceremony where you're recognizing how you both have shown up to this point with the knowledge you've had. And the eulogy is simply a recognition, right, of someone and they passed and all the great things they did in their life. Well, it's usually not a sad story or saying bad things about them. It's usually a lovely story, right? So if you could write the lovely story of yourself in relationship before right now, what would you write? As if it was dying, it was the death of it, and you just wanted to remember it, even though it's still there. The death process is part of an initiatory transition point. And why I recommend you do this, because it does do something in your psyche when you go through a death process consciously and you initiate it yourself and you act as if, and you write to the old nature, you write the story of the old relationship down and you honor it. Something happens in the psyche, something shifts, there's a release that occurs. Welcome. If you're just jumping in, I might recommend you watch from the beginning because we're in the middle of the shift, but I welcome you here. So we're talking about the shift from an old relationship paradigm to a new relationship paradigm. And we're talking about the transition period in between, which is really what this live is about. So after we've completed this honoring, this eulogy, if you will, this death process, then we step into a rebirthing. And first we must look at, well, what does this look like? We don't want to just do it like we did it before. What's a new framework we can put on this thing? How can we understand relationship anew so we treat it differently and we respond to it differently? And this is, of course, a lot of what goes on in the online courses and workshops and retreats that I do, and with my business partner, Lisa Kay, and with my own partner. But I'll give you a little synopsis so you can begin to work with this idea. And I mentioned it earlier, and that is that relationships in the new earth, in the new world, are the most important element of society. They are the hub of society. They are what makes society go. The love between two people is what runs the whole thing, guys, runs the whole thing. And so it is like internally our love of self. If we don't love ourselves, we're self-destructive, we abuse ourselves, we destroy ourselves, and that's not pretty. If we don't love ourselves, then we're not truly loving in a relationship. So we destroy the relationship, it becomes abusive, it's destructive, it's not pretty. And that same thing is mirrored in communities and in the world. So the only way to heal the world is to come back to the core, of course, to the relationship we have with ourselves first. But I'm also guessing that if you're here, you've been doing some of that work and you want to know how to do that in your union. So just like in our bodies, now a lot of my YouTube videos are about life force energy, Kundalini, and management of our internal energy, which is a masculine and feminine energy. Ida and Pingala are the two forms of life force energy when they're in polarity, when they're in positive, negative, magnetic, and electrical energy. And we learn to balance those out and eventually alchemize them into a single unified field. Okay, that's the work of the single person. So once we have worked with that and we are working with a unified field and we understand that we need both of these working in harmony, we aren't just going to be positive pole and we aren't just going to be negative, we need to be both and understand. A lot of this is shadow work. We understand why we are the way we are, how we can love our full self. Then we are prepared to be in an alchemical union. So a lot of times if we haven't done that inner work, we haven't done the self-love, we have to step back from a union and do that before we can do it in the union. But two people in a relationship can learn to do this work side by side and together. It's not always have to be a breakup. Okay. So the new relationship paradigm is the acknowledgement that the relationship itself is akin to the alchemy that happens in the body. So it's an alchemical union. Relationships are meant to be alchemical in nature, which what that means is they're meant to transmute the lower nature into a higher nature. So base elements into gold, that's the traditional alchemy. Relationship alchemy is transmuting base tendencies of relating to each other, old paradigm, into gold, into golden opportunity, into gold is the highest frequency relating, loving, highest consciousness, communication, and awareness in the union. So that doesn't mean the union's never going to have problems. No, but it's recognizing what comes into the relationship is an offering, just like we did with the old stuff on the altar, right? Earlier. And if you missed that, you can go back and watch. So everything that one or the other brings to the relationship is an offering into the alchemical container. So like you left the toilet seat up and that bothers me and I don't like that about you. Can you please be more responsible? Okay, any trigger, anything in the relationship is fodder for alchemy to occur. Okay. And that's just a really tiny example, but I like to use it because if there is a trigger, that is meaning the alchemy is working. Okay. The relationship's job, remember, is to help us self-actualize, self-realize, realize who we are at a higher level. And if we aren't there yet, the other person's job is to poke us in a way to make us look at what we haven't been noticing, what base conditions we're still living under, and how we can raise ourselves up to a higher level. And all the ins and outs of how to do that are things we can do in sessions or in my online courses or workshops or retreats. But in simplicate, to simplify for you, let's take a big thing. Let's take, say your partner is addicted to something. And you, like society tells us that's bad. That's the old paradigm. That's bad. You need to get out of that relationship because of this addiction. I will preface this by saying the new relationship paradigm is based on the knowing that all of human tendencies exist in every single one of us. And our goal is holistic living. So we want to be whole. We want to be sovereign. We want to be a free entity. We want to be loving our whole self exactly as we are and living in, a balanced state. But we don't want to leave any parts of ourselves out. We don't want to not love certain parts of ourselves and only love other parts of ourselves, which is kind of what the old relationship paradigm taught us. Taught us certain qualities were good and certain qualities were bad. Yes to this, no to this, stay with this person, don't stay with these kinds of people. So it very much was about polarity and duality and separation. The new paradigm is a unity field. Just like within, we want to unify our poles, relationships are meant to bring us into unity consciousness. That's where the Earth's going next, is into the unity field, and relationships are leading the way. So the only way they can do this is to point out to us what things we still are in separation about. So if our partner is showing us an addiction and that bothers us, then we need to look at in ourselves and go, okay, addiction by itself is not inherently evil. We can be addicted to meditation. We can be addicted to healthy foods. We can be addicted to love. We can be addicted to playing music every day. We could be addicted to drugs. We could be addicted to coffee. We could be addicted to our screens. And actually, every single one of us is addicted to something. It's a very human tendency, as we'll find all qualities are, just to varying degrees. So if we're seeing that quality and we're triggered by it, our opportunity then is to say, well, where am I? Where do I have an addiction? Not to change it about myself, but to find where it is. Where can I find it and love it about me? Like, I'm addicted to, I say a prayer every day for the world, for people that I love. I'm addicted to it. I have to do it. It makes me feel good. I go into it. And I love that about myself. I'm also addicted to yerba mate. Like, I have to drink yerba mate every day. Like, I love it. It's not the same as coffee. It's like a friend, but I need to have this cup in my hand every day. It's one of my grounding things. And I love that about me. So this is the biggest thing, is finding the parts of us that we have not loved about ourselves. And relationships in the new earth, in the new paradigm, are spaces that are helping us identify what we still need to love about ourselves so that we can be whole, so that we can be sovereign. Because a whole world of sovereign entities is a free world, has free energy, is productive, honoring of each other, and works, is innovative, creative, so forth. So we have to start at home. We have to start in our unions. So when something comes up as a trigger, including infidelity, okay? And this is part of a much longer talk that I will not do today, since we're already at about 30 minutes, 33 when I said that. I'll put it like this: in the biggest perspective possible, there is only you. Some of us are like, no, that's not true. They're all beings are individuals. And yeah, that's also true, because we live in a divine paradox. There is one love, one God, one consciousness, one energy, divided up into all the various aspects of reality that make our individuated selves. This is how I perceive it and understand it to be true, and interpret all texts that speak of these things as one God. All things are God, all things are love, all things are consciousness. And yes, some things are acting out the shadow version of that, the opposite. So that we could learn these things, so we could play the game of separation, have relationship, and learn to love ourselves again and remember ourselves as the wholeness. But in the ultimate reality, there's only one. So if we can realize that in a union, There's actually only two. There's only masculine, feminine. Whether you're female, female, male, male, or male, female, it doesn't matter. There's only masculine, feminine. There's only two. So there actually is no way to go outside of the relationship to anyone else unless you are really, really, really in 3D, which is where we've been. And it's okay if you are. But in the new earth paradigm, the new relationship paradigm, it says anything outside of this union is still this union. Any other woman besides me is still me. It's a part of me maybe I haven't embraced and loved about myself yet. Any man outside this union that's not my partner is still my partner that maybe he hasn't embraced and loved about himself yet. So a seeking for something outside of the union is still a seeking about the union. Some will say, well, this is just making it okay for people to cheat. And I'm like, well, again, are we at base level consciousness or are we at gold level consciousness? Because I am not talking to the base level. If you're at base level, this talk is not for you. But if you want to take your relationship up to gold and to the gold standard of an alchemical union, which is possible and is guardians for the new earth, these are the people I'm talking to. So if your relationship contains a seeking outside of it, those are the elements to integrate within the self. What is that person showing up for them as that I haven't embraced in me? And if I embrace it in me and love it in me and find it in me and embody it in me, they'll have no reason to go anywhere else for it. I just haven't expanded my nature to encompass that part of me yet. And when I do, they'll return to the source of love because there really is only us. I'm every woman, he's every man. And that's true of every union. So in the new relationship paradigm, there is only you and your partner. There's only the two of you working the alchemy. And each trigger is a treasure chest full of things to integrate that create more opportunity for wholeness and sovereignty. And the more sovereign you each become, and together as a unit, the more sovereign and sacred the government of the earth becomes. Thank you, Stephanie. It's good to see you too. I hope to be on here much more. So I want to end this with just a little inner meditation because this work is both inner and outer, right? It's mostly inner, but the outer becomes the reflection for us. The outer becomes the teacher, the light, the treasure hunter, if you will. So I recommend going through this process of old paradigm, death process, new paradigm, and then beginning to recognize now when anything comes up, now we're in the alchemical container. We're not in the old paradigm anymore. And if you have to go back and revisit and go through that step that we went through today again and again until you are able to remember that we're in the alchemy, we're in the container. Your partner brings you a trigger, you're immediately in the container. So let's do a little visualization. Close your eyes. I want you to imagine your partner comes to you and says something blaming to you. And how you used to respond maybe was to get defensive or to, however you responded. Maybe there would be a fight. Maybe you would go silent and walk away. Whatever your reaction would be is because you took it personally or you let it affect you or you felt blamed or wronged. Okay, that's the old paradigm. The new paradigm, your partner says something blaming of you, and you immediately remember that you're in an alchemical container. And if whoever is doing the spewing, the bringing of the issue, they are watering or they're fanning the flame, okay? The alchemy, the fire is being ignited to a greater degree. That means there's something that wants to be melted down, purified, and transmuted, just like in any alchemical process. So here comes your partner with the blaming element. You feel it hit you, and it does feel like fire at first. That's what the trigger feels like. Ooh, a little bit of pain or a little bit of, oh, why'd they say that? Or is that true? But immediately you turn into the space holder for the container. And you just hold the space. And you imagine that thing going into the container and igniting that alchemical fire. Okay. So that's the first phase, is just instead of taking it into yourself and needing to fight back, immediately be the space holder for, oh, that just went into the flame. That thing you said at me really was about, it's the treasure we're going to find together. And let it kind of sit there and burn through between you. Now, there's going to be some feelings there because that's the alchemical process. Maybe that person wants you to react. Maybe you're like trying hard not to react. Maybe there's some reaction that's starting to happen, just like any chemical reaction. If you poured ingredients together and there's a chemical reaction, that's the alchemy. That's the alchemical process. It is part of it. It's just our perspective of it and what to do with it that's changing from one paradigm to another. Okay, we're not going into the fight and the blaming and the taking it personal like we have been taught to in the old reality. We are immediately going into masterful response. Like, oh, here's something that wants to transform. I wonder how it's going to transform. And this also does take a degree of honoring and humility to be able to not take it personally, to be able to be okay with no defense needing to happen. Just the thing, just the item, the trigger, which is the alchemical element that's been added to the fire, to the cauldron, if you will, and now there's some bubbling happening. And the best thing we can do is we can love that part of us that we're seeing. So we can find where that element may be in us, because love is the great transmuter, right? So if they're like, you did this, blah, 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 and you're like, well, I didn't really do it, but okay, that's what's in the container. But have I ever done that? Like, would anyone ever blame that on me? Well, they just did. Okay, so have I ever done that before? You can do a quick self-reflection, find maybe where you have, or maybe you would have, or maybe, like someone might have accused you of that in the past, and you can immediately find that and love that about yourself anyway. Because love is going to transmute. And then you can also see that anytime someone's bringing a trigger, it's usually their own stuff. So they're seeing it in you because it's in them, right? And we don't have to go, well, that's really in you. That doesn't usually help. But if they're bringing it up, it is. So then you can immediately see that it is in them and you can decide to love that about them too. They're bringing this, it's in them, it's wanting to heal. If I trash at them back at it, that's only going to deepen the wound. It's not going to heal the wound. So we're just going to love that about them. And we're even going to see what is good about this, what is beautiful and evolutionary about this quality anyway, even if we think it's a negative trait. All traits are part of evolution, all part of human discovery, all part of finding ourselves and self-realizing. So they're all valid. So if we can hold that loving, unconditional loving space of the container for our beloved who's playing the game with us, who's in the alchemy. And the alchemy begins as soon as like the first kiss, if you will. Like you enter the you don't have to get married for the alchemy to start. Like you feel the chemistry, you feel the connection, when it's happening. Even if it's just so-called dating or resistance to dating, if there's chemistry, if there's alchemy already happening and you two are playing the parts. So you already know when that's happening, but it helps to have it defined, right? It helps to know a different definition, what's going on here, so that I can show up in the best way to support this sovereignty trying to happen, this new earth trying to happen through us, because your relationship is the gateway to the new earth. And the more of us that realize that and step into that and embody that, the quicker we're going to see the healing on our planet and in our society. I truly, truly believe that. So I just want to wrap this up right now with taking a deep breath into our heart space, recognizing all the flaws, mistakes, oopsie daisies, backwards responses are all perfect. Every way that we've responded in all relationships is exactly where we needed to be. And we can love all those parts of us right now. So send love to all the parts of you in relationship that you've ever been. Even if you were the cheater, even if you didn't do it right in the eyes of other people, the world, or yourself, just take a moment to love that part of you anyway, so you can integrate all those previous yous that helped you get to this point. And then whoever your partner is right now, whoever is embodying the other for you, and if you don't know, you can just imagine that they're out there somewhere. But I want you to imagine also loving them exactly as they are, 100% fully, completely, exactly as they're showing up, even if they've wronged you, hurt you, left you, as they are moving through their evolutionary journey and they are perfect exactly as they are. So give them full love in this moment and recognize that these unions are meant to transform us. They are meant to change our psychology into something we weren't before them. So that's part of the surrender of love, right? Is we know that we won't ever be the same again after this love, after this transmutation, this alchemy, and that we want to know who we will be when we allow the alchemy to take place, when we allow ourselves to shed old ways of looking at ourselves and learn new ways of loving ourselves, which is what these unions are meant for. Because true self-realization is true love. Love of self, love of the other, love of life, and just simply love. So on this Valentine's weekend, I send love to you, to your unions, and bless you with the eyes to see it from the new earth perspective, new earth paradigm, that everything is happening for you and that our relationships are truly, truly the highest form of alchemy that will move us all into the new earth that we want. If we can treat our relationships with this much respect and honor, not that they have to be a certain way, live up to an old expectation, treat us a certain way. That's the old paradigm. The new paradigm is every way they're treating me is exactly what I need right now for the alchemy to occur, for me to transmute old tendencies and become a better self. There's no red flags in alchemy. If you've manifested it, you have brought it into your life on purpose because you are ready. You are big enough to transform that thing, transmute that thing, become the greater version of you. And you can thank whoever your partner is for being that to you. This is Deja Bliss. Thank you so much for joining me today. Much love. I'll see you next time.